Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Jared McGriff. I'm head of marketing here at Hypertrack, and I'm joined by Ashish Subramaniam, who is our director of engineering and who leads our uh, our product roadmap. And he will walk us through he'll walk us through the demo and explain what we've been noticing lately in terms of um, how folks are using AI to automate middle of office functions within staffing. So lately, we've had a lot of conversations with our staffing customers, and we've noticed that AI, the usage of AI, has gone beyond the front of office, and it's not focused on folks aren't only using AI to do the aspects of recruiting and accelerating that process only. Now the recruiting, placement, and matching aspect, now folks are using AI more so in the middle of office to accelerate some of the functions around tracking work, payment, and some of the other critical steps along the lines of what makes a shift well run. So that's the basis of this conversation. And as I mentioned, I'll be joined with Ashish here, who will walk us through the background and do a demo as well. So just 1 second, and I'll pass the reins over to Ashish. Thanks.
Hey, Jared, thanks for the introduction. And good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar. Let me start by sharing my screen. All right. Yeah, like I said, thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about timesheet verification and agentic AI. Over the course of the next 15 minutes, I'm going to walk through what does verification of timesheet mean? Why is it important? And how AI is playing a role today, and how we are helping our customers do this today. So let's get started. So what does it take to close a shift, right? Let's answer that first. So you have a worker who's visiting your client location, and on the day of the shift, the expectation is that the worker arrives at the location, they clock in, they report their breaks, their meal breaks, rest breaks, and so on. And finally, when they're done with their day, they clock out and leave. Now, they can do this using different systems. They might be using an app in their mobile phone. They could be using a kiosk at the client location, badging in, paper, so on. Just multiple mediums for this. And finally, the artifact that you get out of these things happening as expected is your time card. Looks super simple, right? It's a clock in, it's a clock out, it's the meal breaks they took, gives you the total hours. And this is what your payroll teams use both to pay out that worker as well as invoice your customer. Now, if you think about it though, a time card is really just a claim, right? It's not a verification. So we're going to see what verification actually means. Now, what does it mean to be verified? So the first thing is you need some independent observer to verify this claim and understand what exactly happened and provide information so that you can confidently know that this claim is true. Right? Second is contemporaneous. Things need to be captured as they happen, not a week later where someone's going in and reporting what they did the whole week, not months later when you're actually reconciling. It needs to happen on the day of when the information is fresh in the minds of the worker and the facility. And finally, durability, right? You need to know that all this information that you've gathered is available to you weeks down the line, months down the line, or even years down the line. So now where does this break? Even all this seems like it should be doable and should happen on a day-to-day basis. But let's actually look at what the norm is. So the first thing is on the independent aspect, right? The timesheets trickle in, and there are multiple timesheets like we just saw. It could be that the worker is using an app, but your client location also has a different system. And these timesheets don't come in at the same time. They trickle in over, a few days, and then they don't agree, right? And now you don't have anyone who is able to verify this on the day of the shift. Next, we're looking at contemporaneous, where actually people forget to clock in, for example, or the system at the facility is down. So you don't actually have a clock signal. They forget to report their break as it happens. And then, later on, they're left to sort of recollect what happened last week and fill up some form that gives you that information. And finally, durability. Most people don't have an audit trail, right? At the end of this process, someone made a decision based on something, and you don't have that information available to you when you really need it. Today, all these burdens fall on the table of your ops team and payroll team. None of it is simply reflected in the timesheet, right? And every exception that happens is actually leads to a person who needs to chase down all this information, reconcile it, and understand what happened on the day off to give you that verifiability on the timesheet. So now, what does this mean for you, right? You as a staffing firm are actually paying before you get paid. And these costs add up. So the American Association of Staffing reported that there's about 2.2 million temp and contract staffers who work on an average per week. So that's actually one timesheet per person, right? And this timesheet is looked at least twice, because once you need to pay out the worker, and the other time is when you are actually invoicing your customer. Now, payment cycles have changed drastically. It's no longer that you pay these workers net 30, net 60, you actually pay them every week, right? And there's this fixed cadence, and everyone's left hustling to figure out, what the values of these are so that the payout can happen. And in addition to that, you're actually paying out your workers weekly, but your customers are paying you only maybe monthly or 90 days out, because that's how you frame the contract with them. Now, the Kelly Services Global DSO report shared that there is a 59-day lag between actually the receipts to payroll, right? So every unverified hour here is costing you money or is a financial risk that you're taking onto yourself. Now, 259 million was the back wages that was recovered last year, highest since 2019. And finally, there was also 5,700 federal FLSA lawsuits that were filed last year. And these numbers are big, but there's something deeper that happens here, right? The deeper thing is that your workers end up losing trust in the system that you provide, and your customers are left scrambling, figuring out whether what they're being billed on is actually true or not. So now, what if verification can move to the moment of work, right? It's just a better place in the timeline. And I'm going to walk you through how we can do this today. So how would a time card verify itself, right? At the close of every shift, what if you were able to gather all the information that you needed and attach it to that time card as proof? This would help your payroll teams only focus on issues that even an agent cannot solve, but majority of your shifts will be verified on the day off. So let's look at an example of how this can actually happen. So here we see a shift by Sarah Carter. She visited the Petaluma Amazon warehouse on June 18th and had to spend 8 hours. Now, this information can be from any source. In this example, we're pulling this data from Bullhorn, but you could have your own system or any other third-party system that you use that we can use as a source for your shift data. Now, on top, you see 3 different timesheets. One, which the worker reported using an app, which is called WorkOn. The second is at the facility, which uses Chronos, so UKG. And finally, you have a reconciled timesheet. So let's see with this messaging timeline how things played out on the day off. So Sarah used the app and clocked in at the facility at 8:57. Now the app uses location. Hypertrack does provide location infrastructure as well, but if you have your own location data, that works too. But we see Sarah has clocked in at 8:57 through the app. Then Sarah also clocked in at the facility using the facility UKG system at 9 a.m. The agent then reached out to Sarah to make sure that she's reporting her meal breaks. And Sarah does a good job here reporting her meal breaks contemporaneously, right, as she takes them. Finally, Sarah clocked out in the facility system at 5 p.m. and then clocked out of her app only at 5:25 p.m. Right? So here we see that there's already a discrepancy. The agent, as soon as the shift is done, is actually able to consume this context and information and reach out to Sarah saying that, hey, it looks like the clock out time at the facility is slightly different from what you reported on the app. Could you confirm? Sarah is able to use natural language here and send an SMS back to the agent saying that, yes, she's okay with the 9 a.m. start, but she did actually leave the facility only at 5:25, right? And the reason was that Eric, who was the representative at the facility, asked her to stay back to load a late bound truck. The agent then consumes this information and then sends out an email to Eric where it's able to provide the context that Sarah provided here, saying that she was asked to stay back by him. But it goes a step further here, where it's able to actually look into that location timeline to figure out where Sarah actually was. So let's jump to take a look at the location timeline here. Here we see the shift that Sarah was on, and we see detailed information on the activity timeline. We see that she clocked in at 8:57 and clocked out at 5:25. Now, the agent has access to all this information and is able to back the claim that Sarah was actually on site till 5:25. So jumping back here, we see this information is also provided. So the additional context of proof is provided to the facility beforehand. And Eric then is able to confirm that, yes, this actually did happen, and he approves that overtime so that the worker gets paid out till 5:25. The agent reaches out to Sarah now to confirm that everything looks okay. This is the final clock times, and closes out the shift. Now let's jump back and see what did we just see, right? We just saw shift verification happening on site with the location information. We saw the gap being resolved right then and there, right after the shift, where there was that discrepancy. And then if for whatever reason there's a dispute later on, you have a full trail both in terms of the message timeline as well as the location timeline to back up the decision that was made for the shift. Now, we looked at 3 properties and we spoke about verification, and we saw how they were in the red. And now we see how this was transformed to a positive way of having a verified timesheet, where in terms of the independence, we see that the timesheet got reconciled by this closeout agent, which is not involved in this process in terms of submitting any kind of timesheet. It was able to figure out discrepancies and then resolve that, both using additional information that was available in terms of location data. Then in terms of the contemporaneous aspect, the agent was checked in at the right time with Sarah, so she was able to provide her meal break times correctly. And all other timestamps were available on the day of the shift rather than being constructed after the fact. And finally, the durability aspect, right? We see that that time card was attached with all the information with the message timeline as well as location timeline to help you back up a case in the future. Now, what does this mean for your workers and your clients? There's that trust aspect and transparency that you now provide to them. You work so hard with your customers to build that trust, and small disputes often resolve in breaking that down. And finally, for you as an agency, you have that proof that you're able to share with your customers in case they need it. Now, what we saw is the timesheet that speaks for itself, right? It verified itself. It got verified when things happened, right in the moment, and then you have that data available to you at any point in time in the future. We'd love to see, how you're solving problems today around this. bring us your closed timesheets, and we're happy to walk through and talk through and see how we can help. With that, I'll hand it off to Jared for questions. Jared?
Sorry about that, Ashish. So it looks like we have one question relating to the sources. So it looked like you showed a few timesheet sources. Are there any other sources that are available to users? And if so, like how does that process work?
So just to clarify, like in terms of sources, are we referring to how they're providing information to the timesheet or the timesheet sources themselves?
Yeah, the question is, yes, what are the what timesheet
Yes.
sources
So
are available and how does the agent work with them and find maybe new
yeah.
ones,
Okay.
like one shift and not another, for one
Right.
client, not another, or even one shift and not another, even if it's for that
Right.
same worker, that kind of.
Right. So I think the most important thing here is that the agent understands the shift context. So the timesheets that are pulled are within that context of the shift. The timesheets can vary, like we just saw in our example. There is a worker timesheet that came in through the phone. They also were required to uh, punch in and punch out at the facility on a certain system. That's another source. All these different timesheets in the end become a claim, right? And just the world is so diverse in that space that you might have different clients using different systems, and that's completely okay. They could be using their own system as a source for a timesheet. It could be multiple other third-party vendors, Bullhorn, and so on that they could be using. We are agnostic to that. We can actually integrate and build an integration, even if we haven't so far with any system that you use as a source of truth. And the agent is able to pull all that information together, so it understands there are multiple timesheets and who the claim is for, right? Is it from the worker on these systems? Is it from your client location on these systems? And then it's able to reconcile, communicate with the different parties, and get to that final answer. One important call out here I also wanted to make that I missed showing earlier was that it's not magical. The reconciliation happens, right? Like you have processes around this, and certain decisions have to be made based on the client, maybe based on the state, and so on. We have the flexibility of doing that. You are the one setting the rules for the agent here, so you can define how that agent needs to behave and what decisions need to be made through sort of a rule book, which can be at different levels.
And as far as that rule book, what's the process on, populating that and refining that and testing it, evaluating it, over time?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, I mean, of course, what you can do through the product is that you're able to write these rules in free form. The agent is able to then understand what it has to do, and it comes up with a rule set. And then you obviously need a way to test this because you can't just deploy it and see how it works. So we have an eval suite that you can actually create for that rule book. Again, AI can help you do that through our product. And then you can also add additional evals that you want to and test against that so that you know and you're confident that the agent is behaving the way it needs to during these workflows.
Got it. Cool. Thanks. And then just a follow-up to the earlier question. You're mentioning you're agnostic around sort of some of these data inputs. What about the other side in terms of the actual payroll? How does that work? How are some of the customers using this timesheet in terms of the payroll service on the other side?
Yeah, again, we're open to connecting with different payroll systems. The way our customers do it today is they consume the timesheet information and the reconciled information into their own system, and then might have a process where payroll does some consolidation on that system before it goes to the final payroll system. But Hypertrack can also integrate into any of those payroll systems. Right now, we're partnering with a couple, and integrations are in progress there. But yeah, if you are working with a certain provider, today in this day and age, even if they don't have like APIs built in, because of agentic workflows, we're able to still use those systems and input the timesheet data into those systems.
Gotcha. Excellent. And then one question here is around the type of workforce. So can you talk about like W-2 or 1099, how that might change around how this is used actually on the shift itself?
Yeah, I think what we've observed is, in terms of the payment aspect, I mean, the shift is fine, but in terms of the payment aspect, the cycles are different, is what we've observed. The 1099 we've seen where instant pay matters, fast pay matters, they're like paid on the day of, whereas W-2 follows a certain cycle. But the important thing here is that regardless of them, you can have that verified evidence on the day of the shift, right? So they might be using different systems, but with the agent flow, you're able to actually pull that data sooner rather than later. So closing the shift same day is what we want to get to.
Got it. Cool. So it's all pay cycles. This is relevant for all pay cycles and work styles.
Yeah.
And systems as well, it seems like. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, I think that's about it for questions. So we can wrap it up here. And thanks everybody for attending and showing up and asking questions, and your engagement here. And thanks, Ashish, for joining us, of course. It's great to see this overview, and for anyone who has more questions, we're happy to dive in. But I'll leave you with the last word, Ashish.
Yeah, I mean, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We're super excited to be solving this problem for our customers. And we'd love to hear more from you. Jared and I will reach out to connect, maybe even one-on-one, and you can share more around what challenges you are facing in this space. And we'd love to help.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.